Greetings on International Museum Day. Each year since 1977, International Council of Museums, that is ICOM, has organized International Museum Day, which represents a unique moment for the international museum community. This year, 2022, the theme is the power of museums. Museums have the power to transform the world around us. In this regard, myself, Sangeeta Dutta, a museum and heritage management professional, feel privileged to be interacting with one of the senior most museologists of the world, Professor Dr. Ashwini Kumar Das. This opportunity has come to me to collaborate. The cultural wing of Trinoan Resource is a platform constituted by heritage and music professionals working in the fields of cultural heritage and museums. And it is also a unique moment for Collabor to reach Professor A.K. Das for an exemplary Professor A.K. Das, an exemplary member of the World Museum community. Namaskar, Professor A.K. Das. Thank you for accepting our request to speak few words today. I understand it must be a hectic day for you. I'm sure, like Collabo, many other people and organizations are waiting for you to hear on this unique day. We are grateful to you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our request. Sir, you do not require a separate introduction. You are the Dawn of Museum Fraternity. Your association with museums, from Arunachal Pradesh Museum to the Manav Sangrahalaya Bhopal to the National Museum of India and Supreme Court of India Museum to the current Lal Bahadur Shastri Memorial Museum, and also including various museums worldwide. All these are all best inspirations for us. You are the group of museology in India. We are fortunate to have your guidance while you were as Maulana Azad Chair in the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. Your writings and your talks are valuable for any museum enthusiast. You are honored with Lifetime Achievement Award by the Museums Association of India. Sir, today let's talk about museum in today's socio-cultural life. In ways museum exists today, like what would you like to say? Why museums should be there around us in our day-to-day life?
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. So you have praised me so much. I don't know whether I deserve it or not. Now coming back to the question, which is a very important question in terms of the functioning of the museum in today's world. So in the present day world, museum as heritage institution have been occupying a place far behind all other spectacular cultural and artistic celebrations. This is true not only for India but also for rest of the world. People in India generally come to the museum not as the first choice but as the last option in a holiday situation. This statement is not just a figure of imagination but based on various surveys done in Delhi and other cities of India by museologists from time to time. That shows how our museum exists in our day-to-day socio-cultural life. So I don't need to explain more, but this statement is suffice to tell us the real story behind this.
So, then how do you place the necessity of glamorous? I'm using the word glamorous. There may be a more appropriate word for it. Glamorous museums such as Jai Hai at the T2 terminal of the Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport, Mumbai. Don't you think it is an inclusive museum giving benefit to the people at large?
Yes. Now let us see how many malls have been developed over the years in most of the moderate and big cities in India. And when we compare this scenario of establishment of museum, against the establishment of the malls, one would encounter a glaring example of so-called popularity of the museum as an institution of edutainment. Do we need a museum of gigantic proportions such as the T2 terminal in Mumbai Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport museum called Joyo Hay, uh, which to me hardly contribute to the concept of inclusive museum. I think it would be far fruitful if we could develop a museum in an abandoned railway station in some out of the way God's forsaken loot of the Indian railways. I can vouch that such a museum, if developed, will definitely be an integrated community-centric museum in its structure and function and would be a boon for the community at large. The Joya Museum is for this exclusive. Is the people who have a ticket, who have a visa, he can enter and see, not the common public.
Exactly. So you think actually, so does this mean that some museums in the urban setup is just an ornamental institution uh, for the exclusive few? It needs to think like
Yeah,
that. Uh,
this is an interesting question and very relevant also in today's context.
yeah.
I will tell something, and here my contention is not to denigrate museum as an institution of learning or enjoyment, but to assert that the today's museum are utterly decontextualized and detached from the people's aspiration, need, and accessibility. It is in fact an ornamental institution for the exclusive, for the elitist, for the people who can afford, not for the people living in the rural area, living in the villages. Objects in the museums are fossilized in the showcase. Exotic display is meant to show the skill of the designer and not the object.
Sir,
For example, for example, Bronze Gallery of the National Museum. As a matter of fact, history is lost in the museum for the common people. Culture became alien to the local visitors. Art represents glamour in the name of aesthetic. That is why museums are just ornamental pieces for the ones who can afford to such an cultural jargon.
Sir, if we look deeper into the present situation of museums, at times it gives a vibe that museums are still confined to the privileged or elitist clutch, which are actually depriving common people from their closeness to their heritage. There must be some remedies to it. What would you like to say?
This is the question actually. Why not the museum should be allowed to go to the villages, small towns, and out of the way heritage sites, away from the elitist class, who value museum in terms of money and glamour. Today, within the four walls of the museum, the human heritage is presented without the human being, and natural heritage without the nature. In the name of museum, one can see overflowing design and not the content. This is the paradox of presentation and dissemination of knowledge in museum. Let the people participate and develop their own museum to preserve their own history and culture. Let community become the social curators to disseminate knowledge about the local heritage. Let the traditional craftsman be the designer with his age-old skill and traditional knowledge and wisdom. If such a change could be brought in, then it would be the ideal situation for an inclusive museum in India. In this connection, an attempt could be made to explore uh, the need for a changing perspective in developing museum in the 21st century. The need for transformation in the structure, function and content of the museum has to be understood properly in terms of people and contemporary socio-cultural environment.
Mm. So, actually, the museum should exist in simplicity, easily understandable to the common people, portraying common people's life.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Sir, this also brings the idea of community museum. Do you agree that common people should assert themselves as social curator to preserve and promote their own socio-cultural experience? What would you like to say about it?
Yeah. Attempt to redefine museum, keeping in view larger than life portrayal of a human heritage in some of the uh, commercially viable museums, or museum-like institution in recent time that is claimed as the curtain raiser for future happenings. And the idea of the uh, Ajabghar to influence museological dispensation is a strategy of diversion from the established convention. When we say that we have lived lived in many centuries at the same time, is a colonial construct having layered existence. Museum does not contribute to such a term as primitive or archaic, but believe in simplicity and purity of existence. Simplicity obviously does not mean something out of fashion, a mundane way of life, or something exotic that existed sometimes in the past. Museum is for reality and originality and not for exaggeration and dramatization. We have some museums in Southeast Asia which tends to showcasing, but who tends to showcasing um, wax models, wax models, uh, and these models are copied from some European museums. Instead of representing history by means of original objects.
Yeah.
It represents glamour and excitement by replicating celebrities and all these things. One can have the so-called glory of working with Mahatma Gandhi in a digital recreation and sit with Pandit Nehru in the parliament in some recently developed interactive museums. This is a pseudo-reality and distortion of history. Museum is not like a commercial presentation in which everything is dramatically exotic, exaggerated, and out of proportion in the name of entertainment and marketing. Museums are serious spaces. It has sanctity like a place of worship, whose mundane, whose mandate is to keep in trust the timeless heritage for the humanity with all its integrity.
I understand, sir. Does this brings the idea of community museum? Do you agree that community common people should assert themselves as social curator to preserve and promote their own socio-cultural experience? What do you think, sir?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Uh,
It brings that
and
community museum,
yeah,
that concept, that idea. Yeah.
yeah. So now we have museums, many museums that is coming up in different parts of the world, and these museums are exploring new concepts. The recent experiments in terms of a history or memory museums in India has transformed the conventional museum of the past to the new generation of museum of the future.
Yeah.
The organization of the Partition Museum in Punjab by the community of the partition victims is a unique presentation of oral history depicting the disastrous events of the past. In this museum, object is not important. It is just a link to a real life narrative. Here, uh, live narrations of some past events of partition by community members are more effective media of communication rather than visual understanding. In the same footing, Remember Museum of Bhopal, dealing with Holocaust of gas tragedy, is a community cultural action uh, which shows more forceful impact. The Conflictorium in Ahmedabad, another uh, kind of community museum that is coming up, um, and this museum in Ahmedabad bringing forth the horror of communal conflict. Horror, and this museum is also based on the oral history narratives, and it's also based on the memory of the collective memory of the people. Like. So this museum is a community space for dialogue, for conflict redressal. Objects are here just a link to the memory, but community action is more effective tool for harmony in the society. These new generations of museums are most dynamic community museum dealing with human problem rather than showpiece of new evidence of art history. These museums have effective existence due to community participation and involvement.
So, sir, community participation and collective cultural actions. These are the two facets of a museum and its dynamic existence. How do you think, sir, that museum can motivate the community at large? That how do you think?
Yeah. So in our conventional museum, community participation is selective.
Yes, yes.
National Museum organizes special exhibition for the diasporas during the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas every year.
True.
Special exhibitions are organized by various museums during an international conference or event. And this is exactly all these things, for whom? We know it is for selective ones. It's for whom? It is for the selective ones. It's for the scholars, it is for the experts, it is for those the business people, for them only. Some of the special exhibitions of recent time have the luxury of curatorial work. You know, some of the
Yes.
museums will find they use this the curatorial work,
Editorial work.
and
Yes.
this curatorial work is for whom? It is only for the elitist participants who have the time and money to spare and come to the museum. Like. Do the community participation in museum involve rural peasants in the exhibitions organized by some museums? Have the museum asked a rural craftsman to curate a craft exhibition in one of our bigger museums? Of course, they are involved. These craftsmen, we have seen that they are involved as craft demonstrator in some
Yes.
of
Workshops. And,
exhibitions, yeah,
yes.
workshops and exhibitions.
Right.
And thereby they become exhibits only. They are not the social curator. They are not uh, the people behind, organizing an exhibition, from his own experience, from his own ideas. So museum has to dump its selective ideology and cut its elitist preference. From time to time, they should invite common people, allow them to participate in some functional areas of the museum, and motivate them to become social curator. Museum in urban areas must make some opportunity, for the rural visitors and motivate them to participate in museum activities. Since they are the main bulk of our population, they are deprived for a long time. Now, a time has come to change our attitude and bring them to the inclusive space of the museum and allow them to become active participants.
So this is what we say, like when we are talking about the powers of museum. So this is the power of museum we have. If we encourage, if we motivate for more community participations, that power is there with the museums. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for enlightening us on the power of museums. Museums are potential entities to bring changes to the world, isn't it? There's so much to actually talk to you, sir. Like there are so many aspects of the past of museums we can learn from you. We can discuss with you. I'm sure, today, due to a time constraint, we will limit ourselves to this much. But I'm sure you will agree to talk more about it later, and we will continue discussing about it, sir. The words are not enough to actually thank you. Thank you so much for taking out time for
Yes,
us.
thank you so much, and it's a good opportunity for me to say something on the World Museum Day. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dear viewers, we will continue our discussion building resources on powers of museums and bringing positive changes to our society. Please join us at Collabor. We are committed to this. Together, let us make our lives beautiful through the powers of museums. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.